The baby food market is valued at nearly $70 billion. Of this, Nestle controls 20%. In India, Nestle emerged as the market leader in baby food. Their product Cerelac is the world's biggest baby cereal brand, and thousands of parents of children between the ages of 6 months and about 2 years depend on it. But now, India's food regulator has ordered a detailed probe into whether Cerelac is sold with higher sugar content in India, which is unhealthier for babies, as opposed to some European countries. This report will be out in about a month, and after that, the regulator will figure out whether or not some action needs to be taken.
Sugars is right now the new demon for everyone, and it's important that we make ourselves aware of this information and navigate this carefully.
No sugar to be added in any food in a child less than 2-year-old.
A similar controversy happened a few months ago with Bournvita after an influencer exposed that it had a large amount of sugar, which is not healthy for children. While he was forced to take the video down, ultimately Bournvita did reduce the amount of sugar in their product. Now even Horlicks and Boost and other such brands have rebranded what they used to call health drinks, and now they just call them functional nutritional drinks after the government's direction. The most recent case of all is spice mixes by MDH and Everest, where countries including Hong Kong and Singapore have banned them, saying that they found traces of cancer-causing pesticides. Now, India's food regulator, that is FSSAI, has ordered rigorous testing and inspection at all spice-making companies. But MNCs and big companies have been at the heart of such controversies for far too long, and their response is almost always the same, that technically they are not breaking any norms, they are not breaking any rules, they are adhering to whatever the regulator has said. And in most cases, they are technically right in that sense. They are not really breaking any rules as such. So then what's the problem? The problem is the messaging that comes across. Let's take, for example, the Cerelac case. Basically, a report from a Swiss investigative organization called Campaigners from Public Eye sent samples of Cerelac sold across the world, from Asia to Africa to Latin America and Europe. They sent it to a Belgian lab for testing. This lab found that in multiple countries like India, Thailand and some African countries, there was added sugar in the form of sucrose or honey. This amount varied between countries. In India, it was 2.7 grams of sugar per serving, whereas it was as high as 6 grams per serving in some countries like South Africa. But the catch is that in some European countries like in Switzerland and in UK, there was no added sugar in these formulas for young children. According to the report, the same biscuit-flavored cereal for babies had 6 grams of added sugar every serving in Senegal, but the same product sold in Switzerland had none. Now, the FSSAI has ordered a probe against all brands selling baby food and infant formula milk to assess whether the guidelines are being adhered to. Now, Nestle has hit back at the report, saying that these allegations were racially stereotyped and they were unfortunate. Nestle India's chairman basically had 3 points to counter these charges. One, he said that FSSAI, which is India's food regulator, they permit 13.6 grams of sugar in 100 grams of feed, and Nestle's product had 7.1 grams, and that was well below the limit. Second, on the difference between sugar content in India versus European countries, he said that there are global guidelines on what should be the total amount of nutrients, that is protein, fat, carbohydrates and vitamins that should go into baby food. And this content of the food is as important as what goes into it. He also said that there are codex norms which their products follow. Codex is a collection of internationally adopted food standards. He also said that when it came to added sugar, they have reduced the amount by 30% in the last 5 years, and they are trying to reduce it further. So the essence of Nestle's response seems to be that the nutrient content is intact across all countries. It's the same in India, it's the same in European countries. But this particular problem about sugar, this varies as per the raw material available and as per local regulatory norms. So let's take a look at whether India's norms are actually different from global ones. Now, in general, sugar is generally not recommended for children younger than 2 years of age. This is because it can lead to obesity and diabetes and other issues later, as the kids develop a taste for sugar very early on. However, guidelines in many developing countries do not explicitly prohibit it. For example, FSSAI's guidelines don't really have a limit on added sugar content in these kind of foods. What the guideline says is that lactose and glucose polymers shall be the preferred carbohydrates for food for infant nutrition. Sucrose and fructose shall not be added unless needed as a carbohydrate source and provided that the sum of these does not exceed 20% of the total carbohydrate. Now, Cerelac does fall in this bracket, so again, technically they are not breaking FSSAI norms. But meanwhile, the WHO has called for a ban on added sugar at all in products for babies and young children under 2 years of age so that they don't get addicted to sugar. A 2019 WHO study on baby food says that many products have inappropriately high levels of sugar, and WHO Europe in fact doesn't allow any added sugar at all.
So if you expose the children from very early on to high amounts of sugar, just in the aspiration of making them eat, because most of the mothers or parents think their child is not eating. So put sauce or put some sugar or put some gur or even honey, and these are so-called natural things. So it's okay, you can feed the child, but you're not understanding that you're giving the child a flavor of that sweetness, which is very addictive. There are papers to show that it's as addictive for our hormones, like some of the substance abuse products.
So despite this, why do baby food brands or ones that sell drinks for children add sugar at all, or at least add so much sugar? That's because the more sugar they add, the tastier it becomes. So children are likely to keep having it, and happy parents will continue to buy these products.
My message to parents is, put more fiber into the diet, don't add any sugar, and WHO recommend no added sugar below 2 years. Now I'll give you one very, very simple way of making your food taste good to the child. Make dal, make puree, add a small vegetables, all vegetables which are easily softable like ghya, gobi, aloo, they can be put into the dal, and the dal can become a taste like a little bit of salt. And then if you are making a porridge like with rice or with the suji, make the porridge, add a small piece of chiku, add a small piece of apple, add a small piece of grape, add a small piece of orange. That will bring the sweet taste.
At the end, it all boils down to regulations. Many companies, many MNCs, they get away with introducing items that are technically unhealthier, saying that they are not flouting any guidelines. But the bottom line is that it's still not healthy for you to consume. So while the regulator versus MNC issue continues to play out, what can we as consumers do to ensure that we are aware of what's going into our body and what we are consuming? The key here is to read food labels. Read the food labels, be informed, and then you'll know whether what you're consuming is actually good for you or not.
It's an important piece of information which, when you turn the packet around, there are these nutrients which are specified at the back. Many times it's written as sugars, sodium, fat, and so on and so forth. Context, 2 or 3 pointers here. The first is, if the number of ingredients which are listed do not sound very familiar to you, that's the first red flag to me when I see a label. If it has products like a Milo's, Maltose, so many of those names, guava nectar, and so many of these hidden or transformed names for sugar, many times industry uses these words written in my ingredients, or there are some chemical names which I do not understand very much, or a lay person would not understand. It should be a red flag for you. These ingredients which are listed, they are usually in the order of weight. So the maximum weight of a product is listed first. So many times that's why when we say brown bread or things like this, they say brown bread and we think that it's got more fiber or maybe more atta or more whole wheat, and therefore we should prefer or preferentially choose those. But when you turn around and you see it's got a lot of refined flour first, that means the weight of that refined flour is still the maximum amount, and therefore these are the ways by which you can identify. So the product which is most is listed first. in terms of the weight, right? So that's one thing. The second is to see when people on the label write that this is added with this or loaded with this, or goodness of, natural goodness of, these kind of adjectives are used. Please turn around and see. Many times what they do is they add concentrates or they add just a little flavorings of these things and write that they are rich in this. So it's important for you to match that and just take like a couple of seconds to see if those products are there.
Say I'm managing a diabetic, okay? I don't tell them that you can't have a chocolate at all. What I tell them is, okay, this chocolate portion you are eating is giving you 5 grams of carbohydrate today, and your allowance for the day is 19 grams for a 4-year-old child. So the rest of the sugar you have to consider. Now look at the label of the various brands of baby food available. Say the one portion is giving you 6.8 gram. So that 6.8 gram doesn't mean that you can give 3 portions of it in a day. If you give 3 portions, you have reached your carbohydrate limit. So rest of the portion you should calculate. You give 1 portion. They are very convenient. When you're going out, you mix some hygienic water with your baby food, and your food is ready. And as I said, the nature of the food, they are doing with proper protein. They are doing with proper, maybe very costly. You can do that at home in less than 1/10 of the cost. But you can calculate the carbohydrate that one portion is giving you, minus that from your total diet from the child.
Hope you found this story interesting. For more such content, keep watching Mint and don't forget to like, share and subscribe.